Key elements of gamification. Hello everyone. In this session, we will cover the actual building blocks designers use to gamify a system, the core principles behind designing a good game, and finally about the real companies that have used this to transform their business. Let's dive in. Key elements of gamification. Let's start with this six elements toolkit. These are six elements you can observe in almost all gamified systems. So let's go through each one quickly. Points are awarded for completing tasks, demonstrating knowledge, or participating in an activity. Points are the simplest, most universal feedback signal. Badges. They recognize achievements and milestones, either as a virtual object or a pinned image on your profile. You may think of it as a visual trophy case. Leaderboards. They foster healthy competition by tracking and ranking progress against others. Challenges. These are tasks that requires time and effort to complete, but critically has no real negative consequence if you fail or do it wrong. That's an important design detail. Challenges should invite attempts, not punish failure. Feedback. Feedbacks are immediate constructive responses that help the user understand their progress and where they need to improve. And finally, storytelling. This is creating a narrative or theme that connects all the learning points together and makes the entire experience feel immersive rather than a checklist of disconnected tasks. These six elements are the basic vocabulary. Almost every gamified app you have used has some combination of these. This slide reinforces the same idea with one addition levels, which indicates a user progress or expertise and group challenges under the broader label of quest. But the real value here is the one line definition at the bottom because it's worth memorizing. Gamification means using fun elements from games, points, levels, badges, leaderboards. In real life situations like learning, working, or exercises, this gamification makes more enjoyable and motivating. Notice the pattern across all of these elements. Every single one exists to do one of two things: give the user feedback or give the user a goal. Keep that lens in mind because it will help you evaluate any gamified system you design in the future. Ask yourself, is this game element giving feedback or is it giving a goal? Core game elements in gamification. This table adds two more elements: avatars, quest, or missions. Avatars are personalized user representations. This matters more than people think. When a user customizes an avatar, they form an identity stake in the system. This increases retention. Missions, these are goals that drive narrative and action, tying smaller tasks into a bigger storyline. Combined with points, badges, leaderboards, levels, challenges, and feedback loops, that's now eight core elements in total. As engineers, you will often be the one implementing the backend logic for these. A points ledger, or a badge award trigger, or a leaderboard ranking query. Understanding why each one exists helps you to build the right model for it. Applications of gamification. Now, where does all this get used in the real world? Let's go sector by sector. In education, e learning platforms users badges, quizzes, and progress bars. Duolingo is a textbook example. Also, we have Kahoot and Classcraft. In health, fitness apps like Fitbit uses goals and challenges to drive activity. Super Better and gamified rehab apps falls in this category. In business, employee training programs using point systems and internal competitions. In marketing, gamification is used in loyalty programs with rewards like Starbucks rewards and gamified surveys to boost response rates. In environment, we have apps that reward eco friendly behavior like recycling or cutting the energy use. And government. In government, traffic behavior apps and citizen engaging platforms uses gamification. So gamification is not confined to apps and games. It reaches public policy and civic behavior also. Purpose of gamification in business context. Let's narrow in on business specifically. Since several of the case studies later we will be incorporating some business case studies. There are five core business objectives served by gamification. The first one, improving employee engagement by making daily tasks more enjoyable. Also, supporting training and development by improving retention through interactive game based modules. Also, driving sales and performance management through points, leaderboards, and progress tracking. And strengthening customer loyalty and retention through reward systems and fueling innovation using competitions and challenges to crowdsource creative ideas from employees. Keep these five in mind. When we get to the Cisco, Deloitte, Marriott case studies, you will see exactly which of these five objectives each company was solving for. In the next, we will discuss about the game design principles. Now let's shift from gamification to actual game design. There are seven core principles every game designer should work with: clear goals, engaging core mechanics, maintaining flow, balancing difficulty, feedback and rewards, play testing, and sound design. Let's go through each of this. Setting clear goals and objectives. The first principle is about goals and objectives. Every game needs a pathway for the player to follow. And that pathway has two layers. There is one primary layer, completing the game, and many smaller goals along the way. The smaller goals do the heavy lifting psychologically. They motivate the player and keep pushing them forward towards that primary goal. In a real sense, goals are what give the game its structure. There are handful of common goal architects you will recognize instantly: territory control, deciphering or encrypting information, escaping, collecting, and building. Each comes with its own set of rules and guidelines that must be followed to actually achieve it. Engaging core mechanics. The second principle is about the core mechanics, and this is one most directly tied to what you will build as engineers. Game mechanics define how players interact with a game and what they can and cannot do within it. Mechanics are the literal building blocks of the entire experience. Here, the design insight is keeping mechanics simple is not a limitation. It's often the entire reason a game succeeds. Many of the most popular games in history run on just two or three core mechanics. Take Super Mario: jumping, running, collecting power ups, and sliding. That's essentially it. Four simple, tight mechanics, but combined and layered across hundreds of level design, they created one of the most successful games of all time. future developers, the lesson I highlight here is complexity in player experience doesn't require complexity in your mechanic set. It requires the depth in how a few mechanics are combined. Third principle is about flow. When playing a game, you should feel like you are moving seamlessly along with it. No friction, no confusion about what to do next. This is achieved largely through an intuitive user interface. Your controls, menus, and options should aid the player rather than get in their way. Here's a neat piece of cognitive science behind this. Human cognition naturally recognizes recurring symbols or actions as meaning the same thing every time. Think of an RPG where an arrow symbol appears on screen, pointing you to turn left, right, or to go straight. The very first time a player sees that arrow, they learn what it means. Every time after that, their brain automatically decodes it as direction instantly without conscious thought. This is exactly why consistent iconography and UI patterns matter so much in game development. You're not just making something look nice, you're making a vocabulary a player's brain learns to read automatically. The fourth principle is about balance. Here's the scenario: a mobile game studio builds an exciting game, great art, immersive effects, exciting levels. But if the goals are essentially impossible to achieve, will the game succeed? Almost certainly not, because impossible difficulty overwhelms players and overwhelmed players disengage. There's a great quote from Philip Hubner, a product manager at Intel Extreme Masters. He notes that professional esports players can execute 5 to 600 actions per minute. That's roughly 10 actions per second. For a beginner, that's an impossible standard. The core principle is humans can only function within their actual physical abilities. If a game demands superhuman reflexes from every player, most players will get frustrated and quit. Balance remains calibrating difficulty, so the game is challenging but achievable. A game should not be built for target audience who are among the top 1% of players. The fifth principle is feedback and rewards. Feedbacks and rewards are essential for keeping the player engaged. They are not generic. Feedback and rewards need to match the theme, style, and tone of the game itself. A reward system in a horror game should not feel like a reward system in a casual puzzle game. In practical terms, feedback is simply the game's way of responding to a player's actions, and it can take three forms: visual, auditory, or text. Whatever form it takes, it needs to satisfy three criteria at once. It must be timely, it must be responsive, and it must be engaging. The sixth principle is play testing. Sometimes this is the most underrated principle on this entire list, especially among the engineering students who are eager to keep just building. Play testing happens at multiple stages of production. Right after the initial game design is done, the first round of playtesting checks whether the core concept is actually fun to play. And if it's not, you want to find out that immediately and not after months of development. But it doesn't stop here. Playtesting continues multiple times, both during and after production, to make sure the final experience remains enjoyable and fun all the way through. treating playtesting as a continuous loop, not just a single checkbox near the end of your project. Sound design. The seventh principle and the final principle is sound design. And this one is easy to underestimate until you experience its absence directly. Try this mentally. You're playing a game with headphones on. Now take them off. Suddenly, the game feels lifeless. Sound and music are what gameplay feel realistic and emotionally effective. Take a horror game as the clearest example. Airy music and mysterious ambient sounds are doing real psychological work, creating genuine feelings of fear and anxiety that visuals alone couldn't produce. And sound is not just atmosphere, it serves direct functional purposes. Feedbacks, alerts, audio cues, even storytelling. If a player hears a mysterious sound in the distance, that's the game alerting them without a single word of text. The danger might be ahead. As engineers, this is a reminder that audio implementation is not nice to have, but it is one of a core gameplay systems. Okay, next let's look at the game development frameworks. Let's get practical and talk about the tools. The actual frameworks you will be using to build these games. For 2D development, you can use Unity, Game Maker Studio, and Godot. For 3D development, you can go for Unreal Engine, Unity again, and Lumberyard. And for cross-platform develop, meaning that you build once and deploy across multiple platforms. That is called as cross-platform development. You can focus on Unity, Unreal Engine, Godot, and Corona. Notice Unity and Unreal Engine show up in every single category. So these two dominate in the industry. Now let's move into the real case studies. Proof that everything we have discussed theoretical so far. Marriott International was the first company to launch a social media game targeting both employees and potential job candidates. Played on Facebook, it lets the players run their own hotel kitchen, placing users into different hotel roles like the kitchen reception, housekeeping, or racing against the clock to earn points and move through the levels representing new parts of the hotel. The business goal was not just entertainment, it was recruiting and retention of employees. It gave the employees and future employees a genuine feel for what running a hotel actually involves, reframing hospitality work as an actual career path, not just a temporary job. That's how gamification helped in employer branding platform. Business transformation at the workplace. Before we look at more individual companies, here's the research backdrop for why business invest in this at all. A 2017 study found that a large percentage of business transformation goals fail, not due to the bad strategy, but due to the lack of employee engagement. Work motivation is the force that pushes people to behave in certain ways, directing, energizing, and sustaining their work behavior. And research shows this motivation comes from two angles: intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation is genuine interest, and extrinsic motivation tied to a sense of success or reward. Both these motivation enhance the same higher order outcome, the task engagement. This is the academic justification for everything we are about to see in the next few slides. Google Code Jam. Google Code Jam is an international programming competition run by Google. A set of problems solved in any programming language within a limited time window. In 2008 alone, over 12,000 candidates from more than 129 countries competed for prize money exceeding $81,000, according to Google. This was the first competition of its kind in the competitive programming world, essentially gamifying technical recruitment at a massive global scale. The next is about DLA, the Deloitte Leadership Academy. It's an online program for training Deloitte's own employees as well as their clients. Deloitte's development team found something very powerful. By embedding missions, badges, leaderboards into a user friendly platform, along with test, quizzes, video lectures, and in depth courses, users became noticeably more engaged with the company and significantly more likely to complete the training programs. Their completion rate improvement is the real business metric that justified the investment. PM 2.5 air quality instrument training. An Indian air pollution monitoring company saw sudden, unprecedented demand for their PM 2.5 particulate matter instrument after a government regulation required polluting industries to start measuring it. The challenge was training the field services staff to fast enough to keep them with that demand spike. The case study headline says that the 2-minute gamified training module ended up saving the company over 800 man hours. That's how gamification directly translated into operational efficiency. About Cisco. And finally, Cisco. They used a games platform across several modules of their sales associate program. Before new associate could work directly with customers, they needed deep, verified knowledge of Cisco's architectures and technologies. And gamified modules became a mechanism for building and proving that knowledge. One more Deloitte example this time with their technology partner, Deloitte employed a behavior platform company called Badgeville to introduce game mechanics across the DLA website, specifically rank and rewards, missions, and leaderboards to measure the surface and reward engagement among the executives. So, to close, today we moved from the vocabulary of gamification to the 7 principles of game design to real companies like Marriott, Google, Deloitte, Cisco, proving these ideas work at scale. Are you heading into When you head into your final year projects, these slides will help you to understand and apply the concept of gamification in your project. Thank you.